Welcome to 15. I'm Luke. I've got Dan with me here. Right,
Hello.
Dan, how are you?
Yeah, good. I feel quite drunk, but I'm not.
What
High on life
have you been on the sauce?
of the sauce. No, I haven't drank for weeks.
Oh, very good. Is that in aid or something
No,
to keep the
I've
night
been
terrors
busy.
away?
Oh, what about you? When did you last have a drop of the old devil's juice?
I wasn't asking. I wasn't asking to be asked back. I was more than happy just to move on from this.
Fishing.
Okay, it is a Halloween special,
He
everyone.
reeks of whiskey.
Firewater. It's a Halloween special. We are a
Yeah,
little bit late on this, but
we are.
we
Got
didn't
lost
do
in
one
the
last.
post.
We didn't do one last year. Um, I'll be damned if not going to do it 2 years in a
And we
row.
didn't do one last month.
Very good point. But first, we have got a film from
When are you doing Christmas? 22nd of Feb.
last week. We have got There Will Be Blood, which we just about both picked. I had to sort of twist Dan's arm there. Okay, Dan, I've got plenty of notes on this. Why don't you kick us off, though? There Will Be Blood.
I have a confession to make.
Oh, I know.
Confession time. What was the confessions? Forgive me, Father, for I have sinned. I could not face watching 3 hours of There Will Be Blood.
Not 3 hours.
And I think the listeners will recall there was a little bit of debate up for whether or not we should be watching this. So you take the high road, I'll take the low road. I watched Labyrinth, and let me tell you.
Right, one sec. No, we're not going to do Labyrinth. Okay, so we'll record
I haven't
that.
watched There Will Be Blood.
Yeah, it's fine. We'll record that at some point later this week, and we'll just chuck it at the end of this then. But we're not sitting through Labyrinth.
No, I'm going to get my review because you're not going to watch it, are you?
No, you can do a few lines and give us a score. We're not doing a full more than a couple of minutes on this.
Yeah, we are.
Right, what's your score for Labyrinth?
4.5 out of
Actually
10.
pissed off. I watched this film. It's been a long. I don't want to give too much of a peek behind the curtain to the listeners, but it has been a very long time since we recorded the There Will Be Blood. I watched it pretty much the night of and then finished it the day after.
Some of us are busy. How many hours do you work at a week?
Let's not go into jobs and stuff. Anyway.
Let's not go there. Exactly. So I gave Labyrinth 4.5 out of 10. Not a good score.
Why did you fucking watch it? Shit.
It's not very good.
I gave There Will Be Blood is a 9.5 caliber out of 10. It's amazing. It's literally amazing.
Labyrinth isn't.
That.
Labyrinth isn't.
What the fuck?
It's a very good. No,
just do it quick. In all seriousness, do it fast. Do it fast.
Yeah. Very odd film with a good heart. It's got a good heart, this film. And I used the word boon. It's a cool word, isn't it? The main boon to this film was the exceptional set design, costumes, and puppetry. Like it's a tour de force on that front.
Who did the puppetry, Dan?
Jim Henson. Nearly said Bowen. Jim Henson from the Muppets. But it feels like that a load of university students, I think I said this in the review at the time actually, that a load of university students have just done their university degree on puppetry and now are showcasing what they've got. The plot is shit and really cringy and somewhat appalling, which creates a kind of cult classic because it's bad, like The Room or whatever. You know, it's that kind of, it's so bad it's good, but it's not actually good. And the lead actress is shit. She's really piss in the wind.
It seems like we said all this after the first 15 minutes. Doesn't seem like there's been.
Yeah, it doesn't change at all. Other than the setting and the puppetry really improves. It is amazing. And you root for them way more, and they're in it far less. But it's just not dynamic enough. It doesn't do enough. And David Bowie is not good.
I didn't expect him to be good. expected him to be David Bowie on the screen.
Yeah, but he's not even David Bowie. He's not even. Oh, it's David Bowie being that. He's just weird, just odd.
Okay,
But it
so
means well.
lovely.
4.5 out of 10.
Well, let's get to the Halloween segment of the show then. Just before we do, just let you listeners know that we're also on YouTube, where if you want to watch this instead, if you just go into the show notes, there'll be a link to take you there. And then if you do enjoy it, if you could like and subscribe, we really appreciate that. And on the podcast, a rating review really helps out the podcast because, Dan, where are we in the world?
39.
Boom.
Bitches.
We're going to keep saying it. We're going to keep saying it.
As long as we're there.
Okay, Dan, we're doing Halloween. Me and Dan aren't horror aficionados.
I know what you say.
I'm really not into horror films. I've watched the classics as much as I can, but they don't really have too much of an effect on me. Dan, I think he likes horror films slightly more than me, but I don't think he's a huge horror fan.
Not really bothered.
Yeah,
Probably seen more.
Yeah. It depends if you want to add Labyrinth to that list. Okay, so Dan, why don't you take us through
Happy Halloween?
Why don't you let everyone know? If this ever made it to TV and big, I guarantee someone would come and say, Luke, we want it, but you're going to have to drop Dan. And I wouldn't even think about that decision.
You'd say no.
Almost. Okay, so...
I hope you would. I'd be very offended if you didn't.
The first film is Halloween. John Carpenter's Halloween.
And Toby could split the funds you make.
Right, 1978, Halloween. Turning to you, what you do. We got nothing to say. You just say the title and filibuster. Okay, I'll start with this then. Very fast sex. My first note. We see. It's a.
We don't see. That's the problem.
POV. Not the sex. We see POV.
Sorry, which is Halloween? You got Halloween. You're next for Halloween.
And we're watching someone enter a house whereby there's a young couple who go upstairs.
You've gone back to episode 1 season.
And they bang.
You don't need to
I'm trying to get to my joke. I'm trying to get to my joke. Right.
Go on. I thought you were going to take the lead on this.
Yep.
Was it for that shit joke?
Eventually, this person stabs the woman. And
what
instead of being, it's not Hitchcockian at all. It just feels
he had to hitch his cock
and run. It just feels like
he didn't.
It wasn't not at all impactful.
2 pumps and he's done.
And it just I think we both just went, oh, and she got stabbed.
So did she.
Oh. All right. She got stabbed. Oh, very good then. Yeah. Are you going to jump in at any point? Okay.
I actually really like the opening.
I don't think the audience will love you now. You're the same person that chose Labyrinth over There Will Be Blood.
No, I think it showed confident camera work. And I think the camera work throughout actually probably was the best thing. It was kind of gave an eeriness through stillness and panning shots. Did you not think? It created an atmosphere. I didn't think the drama was particularly thrilling.
I'm trying to think what's the best part of that 15 minutes.
The opening.
I tell you what, John Carpenter.
The worst part is
John Carpenter loves his own composition and score.
He does.
It was very loud and almost like Dan. I think you mentioned at one point the microphones are nowhere near.
Read that
audio. The microphones are nowhere near some of the actors, and the score is deafening. You can't hear what the people were saying.
I think they put it outside the car in the rain.
Yeah. So what happens in this first 15 minutes then, apart from...
Who cares? Michael Myers kills a woman and escapes. That's basically it. And the premise is he's returned to his house back where he did all the murdering.
It hasn't sold.
That's about to be sold
in about 30 years.
To be sold.
30 years.
I don't know why that... It's not
prime real estate.
63 and 78. 15 years.
Eh? All right. Still quite young then. He looks old, doesn't he, Michael Myers?
Well, he was probably, 9 when he killed her? 15, 24?
When
did you see his face?
you keep seeing him occasionally come into shot, and they
over
have
the shoulder.
yeah, a loud string on a piano goes, or
Maybe that's the sort of metaphor. Chip on the shoulder, sort of. Michael Myers is carrying a lot of weight around. There's obviously some deeper psychological things that they're going to explore with this character, and it's not just going to be him doing this.
But it didn't feel. Yeah, I'm glad that everyone got to see Dan's trousers there. Lovely. Okay, let that sink in. So I think this film
nice slacks.
Is come around when
they could have win Eminem ones.
Horror genre was not taken very seriously. It seems like a low budget. It seems like it very much has carried on from this 1950s melodrama, like this sort of sensationalized form of acting. Like the reactions to people just don't seem at all normal. The women are just purely hysterical and to be feared for. They're not strong. It felt shit. I can't actually believe this thing is well received.
But isn't Jamie Lee Curtis the opposite? Isn't she, as Laurie, meant to be quite go get him and tough? Isn't that partly why?
Go get him. Is that the woman in the first scene?
No, but isn't she meant to stand as a paragon of difference to these other hysterical women?
Wasn't necessarily scary. This, I guess, like the other two films as well. This is more creepy, isn't it?
Yeah.
Than scary.
It's meant to be Ted. I think it had potential, but I also think it has that B movie quality to it. That
feels
again
cheap.
A bit like what I was saying with Labyrinth. Does it gain cult classic for the wrong reasons?
Yeah, someone's trying to do a lot with what they've got there. You know what I mean? Like in a kitchen, like they're using every piece of meat. You know what I mean? They're trying to get all this money to go as far as it can.
Yeah, butcher.
and it's
John
just
Carpenter.
showing though.
John Carpenter.
Yeah.
Shit.
Very good. Have you got anything else to say on this one?
No, not really. I probably would watch it, but I definitely expected a lot more. It's kind of used as the kind of hallmark, isn't it? As sort of the original.
I guess so, yeah. But
I mean,
it doesn't have the esteem.
Look, it's on that.
Yeah. It doesn't have the esteem of like The Exorcist or The Shining, so I've never really got round to watching it like I have done those two.
You said The Exorcist wasn't very scary.
No, it wasn't very scary, but it felt like a quality film. Oh, it felt like there was more care for it. You know what I mean? Okay then. Well, that was a bit of a lead balloon. I don't think anyone
letdown. No, it was a bit of a letdown.
It was, wasn't it?
I think that's fair enough to say. I really it's funny. I loved the opening, and I thought, oh, this is going to be tense. It's either going to pull back and be a joke, and he's not going to kill her. And then I didn't expect it to go the way, but then it was a kid, and it was just kind of a prequel to the main story. It kind of lost its edge quite quickly.
I could say that first part of the young boy going into the house and stabbing someone. If you get that written down on the screenplay, that should be pretty tense. And like I say,
it was. Did you not think? But you don't see the kid. You didn't see the kid. You didn't know it was a kid.
Yeah, but it wasn't exactly like, oh my god, it's a kid at the end. It's like, all right.
No, but that's the point. That's what I'm saying. The opening was good. Panning in on a house, watching the drama or whatever, the scene unfold within, and there's that what do you call it? Fuck. You know, where the audience know what's going to happen. What do you call that? Foreboding?
No. Oh, for God's sake, it's just gone on my head because you just said
dramatic
irony.
Dramatic irony that we know what's going to happen. And that builds and builds. But then it's just, oh, it's Michael. He's a little 12-year-old boy or whatever it is. It was like, what? And he wasn't, and the parents didn't react well. They were like, Michael, what are you doing? As he stood there. He's dead.
Right.
Yeah.
Good. I was going to say when Dan gets closer to his mic, we'll start the second film, but he's managed to do it off his own accord. So let's get to the second. Do you want to reposition your camera as well? Okay. So we don't want it to drop down to those trousers again. So the second film this week is Hereditary.
You got it off your dad, didn't you?
Very good.
I didn't get it off my.
Hereditary, a modern horror
Got a picture of it
classic,
somewhere. I think
according to
it's
some reviews I've read. So it's Ari Aster.
got some cream for that.
See, so he's made 2 films in his filmography, as far as I'm aware. The second one being Midsummer.
And we're also aware, aren't we? We're known for being so aware of what's going on.
Midsummer is fantastic. I really enjoyed that. I hadn't got around Hereditary yet, but it'd be a perfect film to pick for this episode. Dan, what did you think of the first 15 minutes?
Sorry, I'm just seeing if he's done more than 2 films.
Okay, I'll keep going then.
You
this definitely follows on from the creepy, rather than shock cinema that we said that was similar in Halloween and in The Wolf House, which could be our 3rd film. But it's creepy without.
He's done 3
Feature length.
Yep.
All right.
One comes out next year.
Oh, so it hasn't, right? So creepy without explicitly being so. Do you know what I mean? Like they set it at the same time as a funeral, which is a very somber moment.
I like the newspaper cutting.
Yeah. So the film starts with an obituary in the newspaper of the grandma has died, and the family sort of coming to terms with it, but none of them seem too heartbroken apart from the young daughter, who may or may not be disabled.
I don't think she is. Luke is adamant she is. I don't think you should judge people on their disability.
I just judge people on the structure of their skull. Okay, so
no, but I think the newspaper cutting is I'm not moving on. I liked it because too often you just get in 1985 grandma, do you know what I mean, there was a murder in this kind of, because it's horror, isn't it? And we've seen that a bit like Fargo, you get just quite generic opening titles. I'm not saying that Fargo, I'm just using that as an example of the block text coming up on the screen. You know what I'm saying? And I like the fact that it was very much set out as a newspaper cutting. I like that. I think that shows style straight away.
Well, also straight away you can see this is well made. I think there's 2 types of direction when a director comes to do their debut. You have someone that's throwing a lot of shit at the wall and seeing what sticks, and there's the directors that have been waiting a lifetime for this opportunity, and they care about every single shot.
That are deep in the sewer, carving out greatness.
And I imagine Ari Aster's ran through every shot in this film dozens of times, so he knows exactly how he wants it to look. It looks fantastic.
Didn't you want more of the Doll's House shots, though?
Well, I feel more.
Wanted less film, more Doll's House.
So, the Toni Collette's character is a Doll's House sculptor. I don't know what you'd call that, really.
Didn't really find out what she did. She just makes them, but they all seem to be
but I think it's for art
of her life.
Yeah, and art exhibitions.
Is it art exhibition?
I think so, because I get the feeling that her husband's some sort of curator or some sort of manager for her and these art exhibitions. Yeah, maybe. Either way,
it was a very tactile film, didn't you think?
How do you mean? I think the next one is, in terms of textures. No,
I thought
Wolf House.
Oh no, I thought this one. I really felt that we got a sense of. Not indulgence is the right word, but just tactile, that everything felt very textural, very smooth, and I don't know. Just
I'm really glad you cut me off to do a 1 minute bit on.
Well, all right, be a cunt.
Go on,
and not go with me. I've said it. It's a very tactile film, and it's textural. And do you not think? The feathers, the kind of embossed card that she's writing on, the fact that she's working on these incredibly crafted models, right? It's all,
Yeah.
Did you not think that?
I'm with you. I didn't also think of that idea, but I see your point. Yeah.
That's why I said it. Point.
Knowing his second film quite well, he does like.
When we talk about this film,
does like to delve into symbolism. And I believe that's going to be current all the way through this one as well. We also seen the connection between the daughter and the grandmother. I think that's Hereditary. The whole.
Can you tell Luke wants to like this film?
The old expression "skips a generation." it seems like the non-disabled daughter,
You just
she as well
swallow
as
the
liking
critics' response.
as well as liking chocolate, she like she likes she's in touch with spirits and whatever.
She's drinking.
She made
Oh
that
yeah, she did neck a bottle of vodka
she made that bird die, didn't she?
after the 15 minutes. Didn't see.
No, she chopped its head after chopped its head off after 15 minutes. It was already
It's
dead
fine
before
that.
what are you trying to say?
Having a nap.
You're trying to say you don't like this film. You can't see that it's well made. You can't see that it's taken its time. You can't see that you do you not have any confidence in it. Like I have
boring.
confidence in this. Okay.
Bit dull.
Right. Let's move on.
You can't
then.
say okay. No, you can't say okay.
No, I was going to say a bit boring. That was a good segue into the next one. But actually, before we go there, I thought it was quite.
I think you just want to like this, and you. I think you don't. I think it's horror, isn't it? It's just a horror film. It's a bit slow start, then it'll get more ramp up, the tension, and then boom, yeah.
I quite like the way the direction of this podcast is going. I think we're not going to pick any film, which sounds amazing. I'm up for that for a week.
Yeah.
Just before we do that, though, I thought it was quite interesting that there's 4 members of this family.
Yeah.
And we don't, the one who's at the center of the glue, we don't really get much of a backstory on the father. Do you know what I mean? We see the mother who's trying to deal with the grief. We see the boy in the school, but the father who's quite nondescript.
What was the backstory there? Sorry, what was the backstory? The boy in school.
Did I say? Oh, right. He's in the school. He's a bit of a burnout. Do you know what I mean? Just sort of.
Yeah.
I mean, he looks very old. It looks like he's failed 4th grade like 8 times. He's far too old to be at school. But then it's almost like a roles reversed. I can't be asked, right?
Can you hear yourself?
We're falling back. We're falling back into the start.
He's 24.
Do you remember the start of season 2 when we did these
They're
episodes
self-reference.
and they're horrendous?
They're self-reference.
Oh, we got away from these. Okay.
I think you are clouded by a critical response sometimes.
It's not even that critically well acclaimed.
You're fucking jizzing all over this film. It's
no,
shit.
Not.
It was boring.
I'm not jizzing over it. I just think it's well made. It looks good. It literally looks good. What are you talking about?
It looks good, but it's just a bit dull, isn't it? And that's the problem with horror.
No, we're going to get into this.
No, but that's the problem with
I
this
said it's
genre
creepy, not shock yet. Agreed. I said the daughter's quite an interesting character. She is. Quite a weird. You get weird.
She's got a funny head.
Head's caved in. No, because she's...
That was the bird. Maybe. Oh my God, I got it.
And you get these
bird,
little...
bang dead. She got a bang dead.
You get these little odd moments and clues, like she never cried when she was a baby, the daughter, and then the grandma had to breastfeed her. That stuff's interesting, and it's just adding extra layers to it. And it's just the director who's taking time to tell a story. I'm not saying it's the best film ever. I'm saying it's a pretty good start.
No, but when the ghost appeared, you're like, oh my God, so scary.
I was like, oh my God.
It's like, whatever, it's just a ghost. I've seen this shit so many times. Jump scares and all the little clues. Yeah, I get it. Horror is a hard genre to do. I appreciate that. But
yeah,
just because something's well made and tactile doesn't mean it's amazing. The camera work was great in Halloween. That was disappointing.
It didn't look well made. Didn't look well made. Like your favorite word, Dan, you chucked in the other week, mise en scène. Like mise en scène was nowhere near as engaging.
I thought my favorite word was vapid.
Yeah. Okay, let's just go move on. So the third film this week is The Wolf House.
La Casa Lobo.
As Dan calls it, La Casa Lobo.
I love that.
Chilean film. This is a stop motion horror animated film. Also known as a stop motion animation horror film, as most people would say. Dan, it starts off with a German colony that have arrived in Chile. May or may not have been after the Second World War. I reckon it was.
I think it was.
And they're talking about helping his happiness, and they wanted to dispel these horrible rumors about their enclosed society, and they show us a film from the vault.
And that's what this film
is, right? That's
the sort of story.
And the story is
it's kind of fable-like.
Yes, the stories of a girl, Dan.
Maria, who lost 3 pigs into the forest.
Let them go, didn't she?
No, I think she lost them, and as punishment for her neglect, she was given 100 days of enforced silence. But she thought, "Fuck that," and she ran off into the woods where there's a wolf. So there's a wolf and 3 little pigs and a lady.
And she's in a house. The wolf
Yeah,
house.
she encounters a house, and in the house, things get crazy.
Okay.
But we only see, yeah.
So that's
Now go on.
Tactile. No. Well, the first thing that strikes you about this film is the texture of the film. It does look fantastic. Incredibly original.
Well, it's interesting you say that.
Do you not think it? So just quickly,
I thought the audio was better.
Oh yeah, the audio is very nice of the paint being layered on and scratched off again. So basically, stop motion but with paint. So the whole room is changed and they depict stories. It is generally fantastic.
It sort of grows, doesn't it? As you discover it, it feels very much like quite a lot of it's very video game actually.
It is.
As you kind of discover stuff, it sort of renders itself into being.
That's true.
And I liked that. But the audio for me was streets of it. There was times when it was maybe too conceptual, the kind of artwork and the kind of, there were things that you were like, wow. And then we sit through 5 minutes of it and you're like, okay,
yeah, there's art house and then there's arty house. Do you know what I mean? That was very much of the latter. It also felt almost to its detriment do you know, you've seen these sort of videos sometimes where you give a bunch of animators a task and they've got to tell a story in whatever form they feel fit. And there's sort of so many ideas chucked at one thing. And yes, it looks incredible, but this 100% feels like a dissertation.
Yeah.
It doesn't feel like a film. This feels like these are all the skills I've picked up over a certain amount of time during a course or during a study. And here it is. I just want to show you as much as possible. And the plot is completely chucked to the wayside. I liked the first 2 minutes of setup. It was really nice. The colony, we talk. I'm okay. I will go with this. We'll go with this. But it's completely just dispersed, and it's a girl who keeps changing form, talking to herself, and then starts talking to pigs. But it doesn't really say
there's
anything
only 2
meaningful.
pigs. So there was obviously going to be something. There was some sort of play on the 3 little pigs, the wolf. There's 1 pig. We only have 2 pigs, so there's 2 pigs. There's going to be a pig and a wolf that come to some point in the story.
But you said what was very simple. There was 3 pigs and 2 pigs into some ridiculous formulaic equation like algebra. I was lost.
No, yeah, it's obviously a play on that. I put initially I wrote the note genius question mark. Like, is this genius? And then I put it's obviously clever, but is clever. But is it just stop motion done very artistically? Because it likens me back to the really amazing stop motion animated film about the bloke
Anomalisa.
Anomalisa, thank you.
With Charlie Kaufman. And
that felt really of one mind, of one vision, a composite piece that's using animation
as a vehicle.
As a vehicle, yeah. And this feels like I wouldn't have minded them blending and them merging between different animation styles if it had been done. I think maybe it's just a pacing issue. It's a bit too. You just get it fancies
itself a lot, doesn't it? Like it likes what it's doing. It's like, oh god, I can do another 10 minutes of this. I can show off a little bit more. I love what you just said then, by the way. That's so true. And on Melissa, the animation suits it. It's the sort of dire British affair, like a sort of transatlantic sort of sad affair between middle-aged people, and the animation suits that. Like Wallace and Gromit is fun, playful. It suits that.
The animation suits that.
And this does kind of do it. I guess it's creepy. And it's quite, I mean, I may be able to be educated on this, but I haven't seen a stop motion Chilean horror film before. And that stuff works really well. Even the fact that she's speaking in Spanish to someone like me, a layman, it makes it creepier.
Was she speaking in Spanish? I thought she was German.
Didn't she speak in Spanish?
I think it's German she's speaking.
Oh, is it? But you were guessing
Kleinen.
the words.
She said Kleinen.
She said Einschwein Twine at one stage.
You said it's maybe it's flicked between language.
Let's say that, then we're both right. I
loved that bit where the room built and the furniture kind of slid across the wall this side and then the coat came across the wall and landed on the hook. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
that was beautiful. And then we turned around the rest of the room, and there was even more of that. And it just
you could have said there was a bunch of furniture like cluttered, yet to
Feng
move.
Shui was all over the place.
So it is an interesting film. It feels like a film where you see a segment of it, like a film festival. Do you know what I mean? You'd see a
Well,
moment
you said
of
it, didn't you? It's very university. What do you say? Film school.
Yeah, you saw swastika, Dan, didn't you?
Spot the swastika.
Dan's incredibly good at that game. Bit worrying. When you look at one of your body,
There's one here.
So one
nasty.
Salvation Army film. It's an hour and 15 minutes, which
only
is
an hour to go.
Only an hour to go, but that hour will feel like 2 hours. Plus, there's no 1.25 speed on YouTube. Or maybe
no, that's a good point. The other two films are on Netflix, this one. So if you do want to catch it, where do you find it, Luke? What did you type in?
Just YouTube. I do feel bad that we're
going to put the link in the bio.
No, because I feel bad. You shouldn't be able to watch films for free on YouTube. That's a bit naughty, but it's just there. Okay, right. Well, I feel like I have sort of bulldozed the final section of the show over the last few weeks and getting you to pick the films that I wanted. So I probably should let you have it. Now, this is not just because it's the worst selection of films we've had in a long time, Dan, and I couldn't care less.
No.
But this is more...
You obviously want to watch Hereditary.
Well, I'm not sure if I do.
About it.
I'm honestly tempted
think,
either way.
I
like The Wolf House.
I think it's... My problem with Hereditary is I think it and Halloween are doing very similar things, but the way that they've been done is technology just better in 2018 than it was in 1986? Yes. And is the camera quality better, and is the set production better, and all that? Is that just what we're seeing?
I don't believe that stuff though. If you watch 2001: A Space Odyssey, if you watch The Godfather, like those films are unbelievable.
Yeah.
I know they're the pinnacle. I know they're their absolute pinnacle. But you can make amazing cinema.
They're drama and sci-fi.
Yeah, that's more slasher, isn't it?
Yeah, this.
But anyway, you can pick anyone. I genuinely don't mind. You pick any.
I don't really want to know anyone. But I probably would watch La Casa Lobo purely because it would be different. Fucking batshit and it'd be different. Yeah,
different, fun.
I said Mulholland Drive to you as just a throwaway comment. Something maybe it's one of those. Maybe just you have to experience it.
Yeah, like when it washes over you, except that you're going to be off kilter for most of the film. Okay, so we're going to choose La Casa Lobo.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Okay, that's the
film. Not so I can say in a very, highbrow, yes, I saw the Chilean horror film, La Casa Lobo.
Well, you know what I will be doing. Okay, I was about to say goodbye, but instead I'm going to throw to us a little bit later from now, reviewing.
Are we going to come back from that and say goodbye here?
We're already there, Dan.
God, he's good. God, he is good. Right, so There Will Be Blood. Here we are. 2 days later, but seamless to you, audience member. This is like when they... or do you think people think it's like when they do the Strictly results show and they film it on the same day? Tess and Claudia have to go for a quick change.
We've had a really nice dry spell of not mentioning Strictly Come Dancing on this show. Really good.
Because I've not been watching it.
There you go then. Haven't we all?
Right. There Will Be Blood.
So Dan's finally got around to it.
I did. I watched it. Watched it last night. Didn't finish till 1:45.
Wild.
I know. Did behind the eyes all day.
So go on, Dan. Tell me. Why don't you kick us off?
Well, I thought it was actually quite a classical tale. And I've written almost King Lear-esque, which I quite liked.
I love King Lear.
We do.
Don't get me bloody started on King Lear. Yeah. Actually, I know exactly what you mean by that, Dan, obviously, but just for the people that don't.
Yeah. Well, it's the decline, isn't it, of a perhaps once great man into something different. And it's that full... You start at a place where you see someone and you end at a very different place. And King Lear is like that. He starts as the mobile king, and then he quite quickly descends into madness, and his whole world kind of unravels. And I felt it felt like this film had drawn from that, maybe not directly, but certainly indirectly. It's very bleak, though, wasn't it?
Yeah, in terms of color palette alone, I guess there's not much color on show at all here, which is kind of the point of the film. This is a man that's consumed by anger. Do you know what I mean? He's a scorned, menacing, weak, obsessive, detestable man. But he's totally transfixing.
Weak. I think weak is an interesting word. I'm going to pick up on that because I disagree with you. And I think this is what the film is very good at, is that it's audience manipulation. Because at the beginning, we saw it in the first 15 minutes, but we see it throughout. He's not afraid of hard work. He is very determined, very ambitious, and will put
obsessive.
the work in. Yeah. But you said the word weak, and I disagree with you. I don't think he's weak. I think it's an obsessiveness. I think that word is more accurate in that it's all consuming, and it starts to alienate things from the rest of his life.
I think what I meant more specifically by weak is as the film goes on, like this film itself is almost told like a book. You know, it seems it's like visible chapters in between it, which makes sense because if you're telling the whole life of someone, it makes very much sense to tell it in the way that a book would. But yeah, I think the big turning point for me in the film, I know we haven't really touched on like macro parts yet, but in terms of micro, the fake brother vignette. Do you know what I mean? That whole part of the film is the real shift. Do you mean in Daniel? That's sort of the bit where I think the last bit of humanity leaves Daniel. They're both called Daniel, which is quite. Just
hard.
And he turns to stone at that point, and that's when he becomes weak. And obviously, his interactions with his adopted son.
I take your point, but I actually found that to be the most unnecessary part of this film.
Right.
I think if I can tangent and then come back to it, I think this film is too long. It's 2 hours 38 minutes, which is a long time.
Dan, have I told you about 1.25?
You have. I will not watch it. But having said that, it was well paced, and it has. You haven't seen this, I don't think, but Once Upon a Time in America is very long.
Right, yeah, I haven't.
And it is that massive overarching scale and story. You know, it's told a whole life story, and this film is very similar in that. And it didn't feel slow. I didn't feel like it dragged, but it is a long time to sit and watch and have to kind of digest, especially when this film is so hard in the way it is. And I did feel that actually that whole brother thing could have been cut out. I still think you would have. I don't think you would have. I think your point about it does add a depth and embellishes his character, but I don't necessarily think you would have lost so much about him. And it would have saved a good 20, 25 minutes, half an hour even. And suddenly then you're a 2 hour film, 2 hour 10. And you're kind of going, actually, that's more reasonable.
No, that is quite interesting. I actually hadn't thought about that. Paul Thomas Anderson's someone that's not adverse to a long film.
No.
Like Magnolia is like ridiculously long for no apparent reason. Boogie Nights itself is quite long. Like a lot of them are long films.
How long's Phantom Thread?
That's not too long. I feel like it's like a nice straight 2 hours, to be honest. But all the others usually push over that. But I do like what he does. He does what a special director does in terms of maybe an egotistical one. He ensures that his direction is present. And I mean present is like a constant presence in the film. You notice it all the time. Do you know what I mean? He's holding shots. He's using the landscape, metaphorical framing, that sort of thing. And this is a film that is aesthetically driven, I would say. Like you talked about the color palette before. There's no flashes of hope or fun. It's that I was going to say monochrome, but it's not quite because it's that yellow tinge, isn't it, of just this sort of arid earth everywhere.
Yeah, it was sort of sepia. Is that right? I don't know.
Yeah, sepia tones, definitely. And the sense of place is awesome. Like it is fantastic. It's a world that I would have no enjoyment in living there, but to live within it for 2.5 hours, with like Paul Thomas Anderson taking you through it, I definitely enjoyed that part.
I have a couple of issues. Well, I'll go and get to the issues first, I just want to talk about one thing. I mentioned it earlier, the sort of subtle manipulation. I think this film, and it's something we talked about actually in this podcast, is when we talked about American Psycho and the book, after we discussed that and digested that, the book is told through an unreliable narrator. And I think we didn't feel that American Psycho perhaps captured that so much. It felt like we were just watching the tale. I think this really captured the unreliable narrator that was Daniel Plainview's character. Most notably, I think, very notably, the only time with Eli, because from the very beginning, because I watched this with Grace, and from the very beginning, we both said, God, we don't like him. He's obviously the baddie. But actually, he's not. And when you kind of deconstruct it and go, what did this guy do? We first encounter him when Daniel Day-Lewis's character, Daniel Plainview, is trying to rob his dad of his land to drill oil. And he thwarts him on that. So he sees through him. He's obviously an intelligent guy. All the time, all his money he wants is to go towards his church.
So he says.
Well, so he says, but we do see very deliberate and very real of that. He starts out in a shed, and by the end of it, he's teaching and preaching in a big church, and he goes off to university to learn to be a better preacher. Now, you can interpret what you like in terms of your own views on religion and whether or not that's true and whatever, but in terms of real what happens, it's all very quite honest. And I think, but the direction and the way he's told and the way he's portrayed is to be this kind of creepy guy who seems like a faith healer, who's kind of obviously corrupt and manipulating, and and I think actually that's Daniel Plainview's view. That's his view from the offset. And he forces him at the end to say, he's a con, he's a charlatan. But actually, by the end, when we get that forcing of when he forces him to say that, Daniel Day-Lewis's character has changed quite dramatically. He's now quite a twisted, cantankerous, horrible man. From maybe the signs were already there, but he's nasty. He's not a pleasant character. I think that element of the unreliable narrator I enjoyed, because it sort of filled my going. I was looking at it and thinking, I don't like you because you're creepy, you've got slick hair, you're this, you're that. But then actually you kind of look at it and you go, well, what are you actually doing? You're actually just being quite a good guy. And actually you're not the villain. Daniel Day-Lewis's character is the villain.
Well, that's quite interesting. So I thought Eli is the creep that goes. So I don't really think of it too much as the villain. I think they're both quite similar, actually. They're two men exploiting their sort of how to describe it? Their
congregations.
Sort of, well, yeah, yes, in a way. Like they're both men are very much in the phrase like "don't hate the player, hate the game." Like they're both looking for success, and one of them is through capitalism, and the other one is through the church. Do you know what I mean? And I think it's a criticism of both. Actually, I think that's what a big part of this film is. Right, Paul Thomas Anderson before has done a big film on Scientology, and he didn't directly criticize that in The Master. Didn't criticize that, but he makes his views on religion. He likes to weave it into his films, and I think here is definitely saying, looking at how the church exploits people, especially towards the end. Like the end scene is very famous. And I've seen a few people that love the film, think the end is a bit too over the top. I don't actually. I think it's quite a nice crescendo to the film, because even though Daniel Plainview is not exactly the most poker-faced character in the world, he is still bubbling on the verge of nervous breakdown. He has a little outburst and stuff, but he hadn't had a full-blown one until the final scene. And I actually really quite like the final scene. It's very brazen. It's full-on brazen. Right, do you know what I mean? Like, it's very confident.
It's very in keeping with the character. I didn't think it was out there. I thought it felt correct and true to the piece. Grace and I talked about this in the car on the way back today. We've been out, but she said what she really liked is the two signatures. Did you pick up on this?
What, the set pieces?
No. So in the beginning, and I've added to it. So this is her point and my point. But at the beginning we open, and it's a very harsh and quite a violent opening. Albeit it's mono, it's him on his own, but he's striking with his pickaxe down in the mine. He's violent, there's sparks flying. He uses the dynamite to blow up the silver. He falls, he hurts his back. It's very kind of raw, aggressive, explosive, but not in a boom boom, but in a sort of, there's passion, power, strength there. And when we see him sign quite confidently, and this is Grace's point, very confidently, his name. And that's the first bit of kind of a real storytelling we get, is that this guy is called Daniel Plainview. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And at the end, we see him sign his name, and it's really withered and frail and kind of scruffy because he's drunk and his life's gone away from him 30 years later. And she said, Grace said she really liked that arc. You could see that in two very distinct images, very deliberate images, a deterioration of a character. But then I said, I also quite like the fact that after that, we get another very violent ending where he kills Eli,
Mm-hmm.
and I think they bookend this kind of violent opening and signature, followed with signature violent ending. I liked that kind of storytelling. That felt quite circular in terms of story arc. Yeah, very deliberate, and enjoyed that.
Well, that's what you find with good films, like the amount of analysis and interpretation that goes into a lot of big films, and most of the time it's there, and it's so prevalent because this stuff is deliberate by such great directors. They're doing this stuff on purpose. I found myself laughing at moments just because of how surreal the film is, like the bit where they sort of, I would say nice, but sort of slick, normal sort of businessman, and he's talking about buying some oil. And Daniel Plainview is quite, maybe a little bit drunk, and he goes, "I'll cut your throat." And the businessman just goes, "What?" Because he can see it's business, but to Daniel Plainview, this is not business. Like he says in it, I want no one else to succeed. It's just like a Rufus quest. Do you know what I mean? Like he doesn't want to compete; he just wants to destroy. And then that's what I think. I know a lot of stuff's being written on this, but this is just the modern parallels to like American society and American politics. But I think that comes through so clearly in this film.
Yeah.
What did you make of Daniel's
score?
Yeah. Okay, yeah, let's do that because it's Johnny Greenwood, obviously from Radiohead, who didn't win the Oscar for this on some weird technicality. I can't remember what it was, but it was a technicality where he couldn't win. I think it's
Moonlight win
it. But no, score's fantastic, isn't it? Sprawling and almost drawn,
very intense.
Yeah, very intense.
I put it's almost stage-like in that the score in itself is not used. A lot of times score is used to embellish and enhance a piece. I think most noticeably in the film Dunkirk, where the score is just amazing as the ships come over the kind of horizon. It's just a very moving part. But I think that is used as in addition. This felt like it's its own agent in the film. It was loud, it was aggressive,
it drowns scenes.
But you're struggling to hear. It's doing its own thing. It's used to shock, and it does that. The theatre uses that quite often. That music is its own piece, if you like. It has an agency.
I know they've shown this. I know they've shown There Will Be Blood with Johnny Greenwood doing his own composition at the front of in the actual venue before. Yeah, definitely done that before. Should we talk about the child? The HW, that's it. Isn't it weird that Daniel Plainview never makes any attempt to learn sign language? Do you know what I mean? Yeah. Like that's deliberate as well.
Yeah,
it's very clear. Like we don't even talk about that or anything, but that's very much just simple show don't tell. Make sure this man never makes any attempt whatsoever. He has enough money to learn how to do this stuff, to teach himself, to like fund his education. Doesn't make any attempt to do so. And I think it's weird because obviously at the start it's quite an obvious use of the HW to be a family man, to buy land off family men, to do it that way just to see himself a bit more unassuming. But as the film goes on, you sort of it's a bit more like the moment where the oil shoots out, right, and HW gets death from that point, and he rescues HW, but then he goes back out and he watches in awe, doesn't he, as he's found this ocean of oil underneath it, and there's that weird tension throughout the film because I don't think it's as black as white as to say he's using HW for his own gain, because I don't think he cares for him for a bit.
No, I think he cares for him the whole way. There was a great bit in that exact moment where what's the guy called? Kieran Hand's character, who's
is that the right-hand man?
Yeah, the little right-hand man. And his first line to Daniel Plainview as they re-meet is how's HW? And he says, not good, or not, he's not, or something. It's just a throwaway line. And then they stand and it's night by this point, and they're laughing and hugging together as the fire is like this torrent of oil. Exactly that bit you're talking about.
Oh, yeah, I know him that bit because he says it, doesn't he? He goes, huh? Doesn't he like go, huh, at first?
Yeah.
Because he's not fully engaged because he's so in awe of this oil.
And he says, oh no, he's not good. And then they're hugging and laughing. We're going to be millionaires. There's a sea of oil below us, and all that. And I thought that we captured that point very well, because then immediately before and after that, he's looking after HW. I think he cares a lot about HW. I think HW is his only real anchor. But he sends him away because he feels he's a failure. And the one thing he's trying to do, which is raise his son, I think he's sincere about the family man element, but I also think he's using that to his own ends, if you know what I mean. It's a duality. And when he fails, when HW kind of loses his importance, then he sends him away because he can't bear to look at him. But he doesn't want, at the end, that's why he gets so angry with his son when he's grown up, because he doesn't want him to go. He wants him to stay part of the business. He wants him to, you know what I mean? It felt like all that mansion and that house was for him, and he kind of is walking away from it. He wants to make his own way. And that's where the argument starts.
I'm not sure if you've heard Tarantino's critique of the film. Him and Paul Thomas Anderson are good friends, and they have like a healthy competition between the two of them.
Yeah.
Once you hear Tarantino talk, he's fucking so self-aggrandizing whilst he talks about this. He goes, "We make amazing films." Like, it's not just, you can't just give Paul Thomas Anderson a compliment. Anyway, talking about this film, and says how incredible it is. But he actually criticizes Paul Dano, Eli, and the other twin for his, like, when he goes up against Daniel. And that's like a bit, this is something that people sort of disagree on. I wanted to get your take on Paul Dano's performance. As in, he can't carry the scenes. He gets just overwhelmed every time he's on the scene with Daniel Day-Lewis.
I think that's a bit harsh, isn't it?
I think it is. The thing is,
that's like going up against a giant, isn't it? You're always going to look at the giant.
But the film is based on the friction between these two men, and I understand that one seems like an alpha male and the other is a man. But I know he's not as overwhelming and arresting as Daniel's character. But I think he does a great job of being a weasel. I'm not sure if that's just most that it's just literally his face, but he is I've got the vibe that he's just a sort of weaselly, creepy character, and I think that comes through.
Yeah, I think it comes through, but I think the he's not a main. There is only one character in this film, and that is Daniel Day-Lewis, and he's in conflict with himself. And I think he would have fallen apart in the story. Daniel Plainview would have fallen apart with or without Eli. And so I don't think Eli should be capturing the scenes. It's not really a story. That's not really what it's about, is it? It's about him. And so all these characters, like HW doesn't do a lot. He's a kid. He doesn't say anything. He's deaf for half the film.
I love that move, by the way. Yes, keep the kid actors deaf. Like
but
that.
You know, not a lot of people say there's not the only dialogue is really him talking. And I think
I'd be interested to see, because I mean his performance is incredibly powerful, Daniel Day-Lewis's. And I mean, there's a reason why, I guess I understand why he's a method actor during this, because you can't go back to being the posh cobbler, you know, from England after you've been doing these insane scenes. I drink your milkshake and all this sort of stuff. If you in your drama productions had been that out there and that, because if you watch it, like, this is a film that very much kicks subtlety to the side of the road in terms of its performances. It really does. Daniel Day-Lewis is allowed. I'd have loved to have been on a film set and heard the discussions between Paul Thomas Anderson and Daniel Day-Lewis between scenes. How amazing would that be in terms of like giving him direction of his character? But if you'd have been that insane and that loud, like, what would the reaction have been from like other cast members? Like, Dan's lost it.
I don't know. It's fly on the wall moment, I suppose, isn't it?
I've been to a few of your productions. You had a few of them in your people, didn't you? Some loud, annoying ones.
Thespian way.
Do you want to name any of them?
No. I have a big problem with this film, though.
Oh no.
Where were the women? Labyrinth.
Where are the women?
Yeah. Well, 30 years of.
It's the era.
Film. No, that doesn't work. That doesn't wash at all. What do you mean it's the era? In 30 years of his life, he didn't come across any women. There was no point in his life.
It's detestable. They didn't want to stay around for him.
That's not, no, but you can't say that because we never saw that.
He's driven.
That's all inference. No, it doesn't work. And actually, I think it would have added a whole other level of depth to this character to see him actually interact with a woman. And Bill, was he called Bill? The one who made him go to church and confess his sins, the old man.
Oh, right. The buyer that wouldn't sell his land. Right. Okay.
Yeah, that could have been a woman very easily and would have given a whole different aspect of interaction to this character.
Okay. I don't think that's missing.
I can understand. I can see why you wouldn't have a black actor, because you could argue that in this kind
and that's it for this week's episode of
50. No, because of the race thing and of the inherent racism in the American West. And I can see that and this capital. But I think a woman in 30 years of life, there was no women. They were all white male actors. I think that is quite a poor.
I think that's deliberate in terms of the world.
Show. No, I don't think that washes. I'm afraid.
Okay.
You lagged there a bit.
Yeah, I did. There? Yeah. Okay. So
I think it would have added a much more interesting dynamic, and I think it would have made it a longer standing piece, and would have really elevated it to make him. It would have catapulted Daniel Day-Lewis's character to a really quite a horrible place, and I think that's good. I think that's what the character needed.
Should we talk about No Country for Old Men?
You can do if you want.
This must be a thing that producers lose sleep over. These films came out at exactly the same time, modernish in terms of style, westerns, right. Shot in a very similar location. I believe they were both shot on location in Texas, and then both with acclaimed directors vibe. Which one do you prefer, Dan?
No Country for Old Men.
Oh, really? Is that easy?
Yeah.
All right. How come?
The length of it. I don't think this is an enjoyable film. I think this is a film you sit and watch, but it's not a film I think, oh, what shall I sit down and watch? There Will Be Blood. It's very hard. It's very bleak. It's a very flinty film. Whereas No Country for Old Men, I think you can relish in the villainy of Javier Bardem's character.
Yeah, it's a difficult one to recommend this. Do you know what I mean? They've got to be recommending it to someone who's like a proper film fan to sit down and watch it. You can recommend.
It feels a bit like, I always think that, things like War and Peace and the book, these like huge books
Dan,
that you kind of look.
Let me stop you there. The only thing I read more than King Lear is War and Peace.
But these books, I always think, like, I've not read War and Peace, and I won't read War and Peace because it's too bloody long and it's too bloody intense. And
are you from England, by any chance?
Yeah, but these films are like that in that you have to watch them once at least because they're classic. So you should, because I think this probably is a classic in terms of what it's doing, what it's saying. I think it's very accomplished, but I don't think this is an enjoyable film. And when you're asking me to compare it, I would always choose the far more enthralling and thrilling Javier Bardem's character on this kind of road of absolute carnage. That's much more fun to watch than a kind of manic, depressive, obsessed guy slowly deteriorate over 30 years and alienate all of his friends and family.
It's hard to look in a mirror, isn't it, Dan? Okay, so go on then. What are you going to give this out of 10?
I gave it 8.5.
Okay.
So it just lost out on a couple of the kind of being a 9 because of the couple of issues, really, for me.
Got it at a 9.
I think if it had, like I said, I think if it had a woman, I think that would have...
A woman
that actually had agency and kind of it wouldn't temper, that's the completely wrong word, but would have shown a different side to him. It might have been an even worse side, but I think it would have elevated this film more. And it's too long. It is too long.
Heard it here first. Arguably the greatest film performance of the 21st century. Didn't have enough depth for Dan. He wanted one extra layer. Oh, he's bloody greedy, isn't he? Okay, anyway, I loved it.
Why didn't you give it a 10? Why didn't you give it a 10?
I'd give it a 10.
I
don't know. It's just one of those extra things.
Do you love this film or do you admire?
Yeah, exactly. That's why it's not a 10. There's not the love for it. I will watch it again, but I'll probably watch it again in like 3-4 years. I'm not going to watch it again in the next year. It's one of those.
I put
things.
That note. I wouldn't rush back to it.
Yeah, rushing. Yeah. Okay. You should make the rushing around joke every single episode of the podcast so far. We aren't going to miss
now
a
you've
chance.
made it.
Yeah.
Welcome to the gates. We're on the gutter, but some of us are looking at the stars.
Well, in Dan's house,
Water shades long today.
it seems like the Greek Oasis have just come out with all the clattering going on in the kitchen there. So it's probably a good time to throw back to us as any. Here we are going back to Luke and Dan from the past.
So that's what we thought of There Will Be Blood.
Great point, Dan. Dan, honestly,
Thank
you're on
you.
fire. That was good. That was
Thank you.
good. That was good. Okay, guys, that's all we've got time for. That's all we've got time for. Who am I? Fucking Bugs Bunny.
It's Alvin on this Halloween special.
We'll be back next week with an animated special. Dan has been dying to do that for weeks and weeks and weeks. So I think we're going to let Dan pick all the films next week. We might do that for 2 weeks in a row. Yeah, let's do it 2 weeks in a row.
Should have died.
So,
bye, folks.
Bye-bye.